Hi! I suppose before really getting into this that I should probably introduce myself to you first. So, my name is Cayleigh Goodson, and this is my life. I grew up in California in a small town called Novato, which, for geographical reference, since nobody knows where that is about 30 minutes from San Francisco and about 7 hours from where I live now. I was born on July 29th, 1993, right after my parents actually moved out to California, which, being that I was their first and only child, must have been a really fun transitional period for them, I'm sure. These are them. That's my mom, Terry, and my dad, John. They're pretty cool people to grow up with, honestly. My mom's a decorative artist, so she essentially paints the insides of people's houses to make them look like things that they aren't. And my dad is a CGI and practical model maker for the film industry, which basically means that he's the reason behind a lot of your favorite spaceships. Unfortunately, the story of Terry and John did come to an end. They got a divorce when I was 3, but because I was so young, I never really knew anything different. The only thing that changed really was that I spent half the week with my mom in Novato and the other half in this little loft above a restaurant a couple towns over with my dad, which was cool with me because I got 2 houses, plus I got to hang out and take baths in our huge restaurant-style sink and, you know, eat lemon heads and watch Casper the Friendly Ghost and stuff. It was around this time that my parents decided it would be a good idea to start sending me to preschool. I disagreed. Strongly. I think this really set the precedent for my hatred of the education system for the rest of my life, especially since this preschool teacher lady I had called Mrs. Blueberry tried to crush all of my childhood dreams at the age of 4. Like, you're named after a fruit. Get over yourself. I was obsessed with The Little Mermaid as a kid, like to an unhealthy extent. I used to watch it at least once, usually multiple times a day, to the point that I could probably recite it to you now. I literally wanted to be a mermaid so bad that I would carry forks around with me to brush my hair with and wrap blankets around my legs so you couldn't see my feet while I sang to my fish tank. Like a little weirdo. Basically, the biggest influences in my life were a mermaid and a frog, because it was watching the Muppets when I was 2 that made my strange little toddler self realize what it wanted to be when it grew up. Not a Muppet. I started going to acting classes, taking voice lessons. I even did ballet for a minute. When I was 7, I decided that I wanted to play instruments too, so I saved up all the money I had and bought an acoustic guitar, which I thought was the coolest thing ever, until I started taking lessons and realized that all we ever played were nursery rhymes and lullabies, which, being the overly ambitious 7-year-old I wasn't good enough, as all I wanted to play was the entire Josie and the Pussycats soundtrack, which I then proceeded to learn on my own in my bedroom instead. Flash forward to high school, because let's be honest, nothing good happens between the ages of 8 and 12. I went to an arts high school cleverly titled Marin School of the Arts, which might sound really prestigious, but in reality, it just meant that you got 2 periods a day in your desired art form rather than 1. I was a bit of an oddball here in that I tended to bounce around majors quite a bit more than anyone else I knew. Not because I was being finicky, I just liked to do a lot of different things, some of which included visual art, film for a little while, and finally musical theater for the duration of my high school career. So I did a bunch of shows and it was really fun and blah blah blah, but I never really considered myself a musical theater person. All of my friends were musicians, and I wound up spending most of my time playing more open mic gigs than I did actual theatrical performances. I had wanted to get out of my tiny little town for as long as I could remember, so as soon as I was able to, I decided to pack my life up in a Volkswagen Bug and move it down to Southern California, where I was gonna study musical theater and maybe find a recording studio nicer than the one I'd been using that summer. My bed. College was cool for a minute, until I realized how much I actually hated everything about it, and even though I was already up most nights doing homework, like some kind of fiscally responsible idiot, I got a part-time job that kept me out until 3 a.m. every night. So my 8 o'clock classes were a real cool time. By the end of the year, I just personally couldn't handle it anymore. I was more stressed than I had ever been in my life. I wasn't doing well in my classes because I didn't have enough time to devote to them, and yet I literally never slept. Unfortunately, because I was from out of town, I had lived on campus all year, so as soon as school ended, I was out of a place to live. But I still had my job forcing me to stay in the area, which meant about 3 months living out of my car in combination with various hotel rooms and/or friends' couches. Thanks, guys, for housing me in my time of need. Now, thankfully, I have an apartment of my own to live in, and I started taking music classes online from Berklee School of Music. So between that and this YouTube thing I've started doing, I basically just spend all of my time on the internet. Which is healthy, right? This is my life. Anyway, thanks for enduring my life with me. I know it wasn't easy. If you'd like to stick around, see what happens next in my weird little world, you can subscribe to my channel here to be told when I have made a fool out of myself on camera again. Hopefully. You have a wonderful day, and I will see you next week.